No matter how much work I get done, work continues to pile up. I constantly fight with receipts from morning to night. Before I knew it, I was nearly 30. My ability to recover has slowly deteriorated. It happened while I was pondering such things on my way home from working on my day off. Seiichiro Kondo suddenly heard a woman scream and ran to the alley to see her begging for someone to save her as a portal was sucking her away. He ran and reached, and when they touched fingers, their bags were all that remained. He woke up next to the girl as the surrounding medieval bystanders cheered to the successful summon of their holy maiden. Sei took particular notice of a purple-eyed man with an aloof stare. Prince Urius offered his hand, telling the girl they'd been waiting for her. Sei, meanwhile, had accidentally been summoned as a consequence. From what they told him, this was the kingdom of Romani, home to a miasmic forest known as the Demon Forest. Miasma erupted from it once every 100 years, unleashing a plague. The only one who could purify it was the Holy Maiden. They utilized all the kingdom's knowledge to perform a parallel world summoning spell. Despite it being what they called an act of God, they apologized for involving Sei and bore full responsibility. The Prime Minister decreed they provide him with all the food, clothing, and shelter he needed. They asked the other worlder if there was anything else he desired. Hearing he could live his days out doing nothing, he thought this really was a dream. However, he still asked that they please let him work. After being a working member of society for 7 years, he completely internalized the corporate slave mentality and couldn't help answering the way he did. He stayed in a dormitory where many of the palace civil servants lived. He ended up taking a job at the royal accounting department and wondered if his skills would be sufficient in this world. Laying back, he hoped that girl was alright. Hearing knocks at his door, he'd be greeted by Norbert Blanc. Their boss had him bring Sei some documents and clothes. Norbert was quite friendly, seemingly golden retriever-like. He also thought Seiichiro was too much to say, and came to the same conclusion I did by calling him Sei. They used Arabic numerals here, and words translated automatically, so Sei was able to read with ease. He'd suddenly be approached by the dazzling guy from the other day, who asked what Sei was doing here. Sei explained he was waiting for a helmet from the Royal Accounting Department. Norbert came running towards them and was shocked to see Commander Aresh Indolark. Aresh sighed, and glancing at Sei, his eyes widened. Aresh took off shortly. Norbert had never seen the commander of the Third Royal Order up close before. He wondered if perhaps Aresh was worried, since Sei was from another world. He's heard Aresh was ruthless, but maybe he had a nice side too. Norbert explained the Third Royal Order was full of elite knights who could wield both magic and swords. Commander Indolark was in a league of his own though. Handsome, strong, and the son of a marquess, so he was from a good family. A rare prodigy who made Knight Commander at an exceptionally young age. Their boss, Helmut Samaria, showed them to the accounting department, and they'd start by having tea. Shortly, it was already time for lunch, so they went to the cafeteria. By evening, when everyone was heading out, Sei was taken aback. He couldn't believe everyone left promptly at the end of the workday. Bro has Japanese salaryman Stockholm Syndrome. Helmut told him since tomorrow was his day off, to take the time to buy anything he needed in town, and paid him promptly. The next day, Norbert took Sei shopping. The currency they used here was called rula. 4 rula was about equivalent to 100 yen, or 64 cents in real money. Sei took notice of an abacus and decided to buy it. Looking at pens, Norbert told Sei they had pens in the office. However, Sei wanted his own. He wanted a pen with magic ink that didn't need refilling, despite its expensive price. He figured he'd have to work hard starting tomorrow to save up. The next day, the co-workers stood stunned, with Sei having come early, tidying up the place. Norbert would ask if he slept well last night, and even though Sei replied yes, Norbert couldn't make sense of it with the super dark bags under his eyes. Norbert gave him a nutritional tonic to take tonight to get good sleep. Sei was then alerted the Holy Maiden was calling for him. Urius scolded him immediately for being late, though she told Urius she was the one who asked for him without warning. Yua Shiraishi introduced Urius as the kingdom's first prince, who'd been looking after her here. Sitting and chatting, Sei asked what she intended to do from here, and she firmly answered she wanted to do her part as the Holy Maiden. There were a lot of people in the kingdom suffering, and she was the only one who could help. Prince Urius would suddenly get called away with an urgent request from his father, so he left things here to Aresh. Sei told Yua that while it was fine to have some sense of justice, she should give some thought to her situation and surroundings. Regardless of the duties of a holy maiden, she was kidnapped and summoned to work for people of this kingdom. He recommended she thought well about what that meant and be certain of the conditions before she acted. She thought he was telling her to refuse, but he was only saying she should take her time to understand what was going on. After all, she had no idea the dangers of being the holy maiden, and they may not care if she lived or died, so long as the miasma was taken care of. She questioned how he could be so cold, and reasonably, he responded they didn't even know if what they were told was the truth. I'm gonna be honest, I like how logical he is. Yua started getting in her feelings, telling him she understood the two of them had completely different ways of thinking. She was going to do her best for the people of this kingdom. Typical emotional thinker. People who think like this will get you hurt with their good intentions. They need rational thinkers like Sei to lead them in the right direction. Lying in bed that night, Sei thought about how it was an adult's responsibility to offer guidance to minors, but he wasn't expecting her to listen to a complete stranger like him. The next morning, he was so full of energy, it scared Norbert. The tonic worked wonders apparently. They came from a skilled apothecary who made them for the knights. After work, Sei bought 10 bottles. Entering shop came both Commander Indelark and Vice Captain or Jeff Rhoda. Or Jeff asked what the funnel department was doing here and referred to Sei as the Holy Maiden's tag-along. He teased that despite being from another world, Sei looked like a perfectly unremarkable ordinary guy. With Sei promptly leaving, Aresh told him the Prime Minister had his eye on him. Sei wasn't sure what to make of that, but assumed the PM probably thought of him as a nuisance if he found out what he said to Yua. Helmet was surprised to see Sei asking for his next assignment. Norbert was amazed, seeing Sei get to quick work using the abacus he bought the other day. Sei wasn't worried about fatigue, because as long as he had tonics, he wouldn't get tired no matter how much he worked. He paused and showed Helmut there was something off about the budget request he was working on. The numbers were too round. Plus, the Third Royal Order submitted 3 identical requests for training costs, but the amount listed on each was different. Helmut answered they filed everything as training expenses, so it was fine. This pissed Sei off. He stopped Helmut from stamping approvals without examining each receipt carefully. Norbert assured him it was fine, but now Sei realized why they were called the funnel department. They literally acted like a conveyor belt for the Third Order. It was only an accounting department in name, when really, it was a front for the upper class to do as they pleased with national taxes. He knew there was no way things could run smoothly without a balance of income and costs, and needed to investigate how they were dealing with the shortfall of money. He told them from now on, they return any incomplete forms that had no written explanation of why. They needed to let the requesters know they wouldn't tolerate wasteful spending. Or Jeff would approach Aresh, letting him know how recently their budget requests were being rejected and returned. Hearing it had to do with the funnel department, Aresh took a stark pause. Spotting Aresh, Yua would run up to him, and Prime Minister Camille Carvada reminded her she mustn't run in the halls. She apologized, and the two made small talk about her classes. She thought her instructor was scary, but would probably be able to work harder if someone as kind and cool as him were her instructor. Or Jeff couldn't believe she was saying this about their heartless Prime Minister. Having looked into things, Sei could see all the deficits had been paid for out of the Demon Forest Countermeasures Fund of the defense budget. The Demon Forest miasma only erupted once every century. It would seem they've grown comfortable spending the money set aside for that. But if the miasma started causing damage, contaminating plants, spreading to animals and humans, that would definitely lead to a fall in tax revenue. The kingdom's coffers would bleed dry at this rate. A knight from the order came shouting, asking why they refused another budget request. They've loosened restrictions, but he still came every day to complain. Another knight came over to say there was trouble. There was an official occurrence of miasma. Sei buckled down and went harder to work, doing everything he could on his end. During a meeting, the Prime Minister read out the reports on disparity between national income and expenditures for the past 2 decades, as well as the specific amount spent by each department. On top of that, a calculation table for the total losses expected by potential miasma damage in the future. He asked Helmut about this. The knight from the other day argued with Sei again, and Camille came by, looking to offer Sei a proper position. Sei was intimidated. Camille likely had the same authority as the Prime Minister did in Japan. Camille hereby appointed Sei to assistant director of the Royal Accounting Department because of his excellent report. Both the wealth of Sei's information and his writing was impeccable. He hoped Sei would continue to serve their kingdom faithfully. Sei was sick of management. He wanted to work without responsibilities or restraints. Unfortunately, Camille took notice that he did indeed have management experience. His coworkers would later congratulate him on becoming their superior. That evening, he'd go out to buy more tonics because he ran out, and going to take another sip, his heart pulsed. He fell to the floor, and that's when Aresh would find him at the apothecary. The store owner told Aresh the royal errand runner came by today. Aresh didn't know who he was referring to until the man described the bespectacled civil servant with terrible bags under his eyes. Noticing Sei's overdose symptoms, Aresh would cast healing magic with a sweet melody. But Sei's chest suddenly felt hot due to magic sickness. It was because he was an otherworlder. The commander knew nothing good came from being involved with an otherworlder, but he didn't have much of a choice now. When Sei finally woke up, he'd find Aresh on top of him with his shirt unbuttoned. It was quite the healing process. Luckily, Aresh had suppressed his symptoms with the life force spell. Sei couldn't remember anything that had happened. Plus, given the scenario, he couldn't even think straight. The commander explained that his magic was too powerful for Sei, hence his magic sickness. From here on, he needed Sei's consent before doing anything more. At this rate, he might end up dying from getting crushed by the powerful magic. The treatment involved familiarizing the patient with the caster's magic. Though he didn't really understand, Sei didn't want to die. Mostly because of his work. This guy really needs a life outside of his job. As he accepted, Aresh took off his clothes, running his hands around Sei's body. Then, he'd kiss his patient. But this was only the emergency treatment, meaning they'd have to go all the way. Waking up the next morning, Sei felt fine, both mentally and physically. Looking at the time, he realized he was late for work. Before rushing off, he promised to thank the commander later on for saving his life. Aresh freaked out, especially considering the night they just had. While working, Sei was discomforted by the pain in his lower back. However, his mind felt clear, and he was in better shape than usual. His mind flashed back to the events of the previous night though, but he'd quickly shoved the thoughts away. Not everyone could use magic, which was why the Third Royal Order, known for their magical abilities, held so much influence in the royal palace. It finally clicked that the commander used his precious magic to save his life, and even went ahead to do something he really didn't want to do. Ayo, how did Sei repay him? By rushing out of the room the next morning without thinking, ignoring the man he spent the night with. Not even a box of sweets would be enough to thank Aresh. So, Sei asked Norbert what would be the proper way to apologize to someone of higher status. Norbert told him that at worst, he'd be locked up in prison. Luckily, Sei was an esteemed guest from another world, so he was safe. He then asked how much magic usually cost, and according to Norbert, he'd have to pay in gold coins. 1 gold coin was about 2.5 million yen. Holy, that's a lot, guys. Sei considered asking if he could pay in installments. During magic lessons, Yua asked Aresh why he wanted to become a knight, but he wasn't about to entertain unrelated questions. He didn't understand why the sensibilities of otherworlders were so different from theirs. Yua was a holy maiden who was clueless as to how to use magical energy. She had the crucial task of purifying the demon forest's miasma, yet she didn't have a hint of urgency. Typical teenage girl. Moreover, Aresh was pissed about the fact that Sei abandoned him for some so-called work. He would then head over to Sei's office and drag him off to meet Cyril Quelbus, director of the Magical Bureau. Aresh explained to Cyril that Sei had nearly died from an overdose and magic sickness. Going through the records, the director found it weird. He examined Yua, and she had no abnormalities. Since Sei was caught up in the summoning ritual, Aresh suspected he might not have received the blessings Yua did. So, he scolded Cyril for not examining Sei properly. Sei could see his own position. The kingdom might be taking care of him on the surface, but they'd be perfectly happy if he went and died on his own. Cyril speculated Sei had no resistance to magicules. These were a type of energy present in the air. They tended to be abundant in herbs, used as raw materials for medicine, making them likely the culprit in overdosing. But these magicules were also present in all types of food, so Sei should have shown symptoms earlier. Hearing that his meals were mostly made of vegetables, the doctor was stunned. How did he even survive off that? Well, Sei explained if he ate any meat, he'd suffer from indigestion. Now he figured it was due to the magicules. Moreover, he's always had a weak stomach, thanks to his unhealthy lifestyle and lack of sleep. He thought his indigestion was just normal. Even Cyril knew something was wrong with this guy in the head. he would cast a magical observational spell. Sei was amazed. This was the first time seeing magic while fully conscious. It was like having a CT scan. When the process was done, Aresh held his hands, helping him acclimate to the magical energy. They'd have to stay like this for a while. Zero confirmed that Sei had almost no resistance to magical energy or magicules. But it wasn't completely zero. He was slowly gaining resistance. So if he focused on eating things with low levels of magicules, he would eventually be able to handle all foods normally. Till then, medicines high in magicules were forbidden. Sei argued that his fatigue went away and he felt more comfortable when he drank the tonics. But Zero told him his body didn't have the capacity to withstand something like that. The only thing that made him happy since coming to this world had now been taken from him. Sei couldn't wait to get back to work, but he didn't expect Aresh to go to the cafeteria with him and fill his plate with the proper food he was to eat. Everyone else couldn't believe the commander was actually taking care of someone. Since Sei couldn't finish all that food, Aresh told him to focus on the meats and grains. He needed to build up his strength. Returning to the office, Norbert comforted Sei and asked if Aresh was the one he had put out for. Sei explained that the commander had saved his life the previous night, and today he'd been worrying about him. Norbert was amazed Sei didn't get punished for causing trouble for the commander. Realizing that he really could have gotten in trouble, Sei thought he needed to apologize and compensate Aresh. But for now, he needed to clear up the work on his desk. He'd noticed another deliberate inflation of numbers, so he rejected the request, checking budget requests from each department, calculating necessary expenses, all while his work hours were eaten up, dealing with incessant complaints. There was barely enough time in the day for him to handle all this. If he had those nutritional tonics, he'd be able to cut back on sleep and get way more done. Realizing that the tonics were too strong, he thought about using something less potent. So, next time, he would ask the apothecary about it. Aresh would then enter, looking quite upset that Sei was still working late. His rage was seething through because Sei wasn't prioritizing his recovery. The only reason he was fine now was that the commander had familiarized him with his magic. Maybe Sei wanted to do that night over and over again. Aresh couldn't believe this fool was actually considering it, all because he wanted to take more tonics. Dragging him out, Sei stopped him, promising to go home and rest. He just wanted to take some work home, but the commander asking him to get changed wasn't what he expected. They'd head over to a restaurant, where Aresh stuffed him with more food again. Sei then thanked him for yesterday and apologized for his rude behavior this morning. Aresh scolded him for working late. He didn't understand why Sei was working in the first place. The kingdom already guaranteed his livelihood. There was no need for him to exhaust himself every day in the office. Sei answered that it was perhaps to establish his self-worth. Aresh went, "Huh? It didn't even make any sense." Either way, Sei felt more at ease while working. The commander argued there was no point in him working to the point of ruining his health, but Sei was the type who couldn't help but get absorbed in things. After all, he was doing this voluntarily. However, he promised to look after his health more. Aresh got really irritated just looking at this guy. There was still something he couldn't explain. Alright, that's where we end this week. Man, I can't believe this series is doing Gay Stay Night, where in order to recover damaged magic circuits, you need to exchange bodily fluids. Are you enjoying this? Subscribe to let me know. But for now, watch this next video. It's me, Comfy T. I'll see you all in the next one.